Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Meredith Taylor and I'm the Community Relations Manager for City Current. Welcome to our first ever virtual nonprofit tour. Now, normally we would be hosting these nonprofit tours in person, but considering the circumstances, we are very fortunate to be able to convene virtually. And whether it's virtual or in person, the purpose behind these tours remains the same: to spotlight nonprofit organizations who are powering the good in our communities, as well as figure out how we can come alongside their missions and help them power that good. Now today, I am joined by City Current's Director of Digital Media, Andrew Bartolotta, who's going to be taking questions throughout today's tour. Give him a wave, Andrew. And he's going to be taking those questions, so if you want to submit them in the chat box throughout the tour, feel free, and we will get to them at the Q&A session at the end. Now, today we are all in for a treat as we are joined by Playhouse on the Square's executive producer, Michael Detroit. Originally from Marquette, Michigan, Michael has called Memphis home since 1989. Honored with a bachelor's in music education from Northern Michigan University and a Master of Fine Arts in Musical Theater from San Diego State University, Michael has nearly 100 professional stage credits, hundreds of TV commercial and industrial and voiceover credits, and has appeared in 9 films, including Nothing But the Truth, The Client, The People vs. Larry Flint, and most recently, Hallmark's Christmas at Graceland, Home for the Holidays. Michael was given the privilege of becoming Circuit Playhouse Inc.'s executive producer in March of 2018. Prior to becoming executive producer, Michael served as Circuit Playhouse Inc.'s associate producer for 20 years. For 26 years, Michael has been the audition coordinator for the Unified Professional Theater Auditions, a yearly event where more than 80 professional theater companies from across the United States converge on Memphis in order to audition professional theater talent. Michael has also been a resident company member at Playhouse on the Square, receiving numerous Memphis Theater Awards for his stage work. Also a director, Michael directed award-winning runs of $1 Million Quartet, Sisters of Swing, A Closer Walk with Patsy Cline, and A Man of No Importance. Michael was an adjunct faculty member in the theater department at the University of Memphis for 24 years. He is happily married to Denise Perkins, and they have a wonderful daughter named Patsy. Well, Michael, it's hard to follow that introduction, so I'm glad that you're the one leading today's tour. So
I don't think we have time anymore, do we, for a tour?
Absolutely. So without further ado, everyone, Michael Detroit.
Hi, folks. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Andrew, for tending the technology for us as well, too. I'm really happy that everybody's here today. This is new for us. We did a dry run of this last week to see where any hiccups might be. Hopefully, we've solved any of those, but we'll do our best. It's very exciting, this kind of new frontier for us, certainly in the digital world. Being in the theater, we're used to having everything live and being in the same room with you and breathing the same air and shaking hands and hugging, and it's just a different time right now. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us, certainly, to let you see behind the curtain, so to speak, here at our theater, and to share with you and keep creativity alive, certainly with all the challenges we're facing right now with COVID-19. The arts are certainly very important, aren't they? I mean, we tend to lean back into the arts when we go home and we read that book, or we listen to that music, or you see these videos of people in the cities and their skyscrapers leaning out the windows playing violins. The arts are a very healing time and a safe place to go to discuss and to ruminate and to get angry and to celebrate and all of those good things. So always happy to be a part of any discussion like this. And we love having people in our theater, and we can't wait till we get through all of this so that you all can come into our actual physical building and enjoy what we have to offer. There are a lot of places that you're not allowed to go, though, when you're here in the physical building, because we're running a lot of technology behind the scenes. But with a tour like this, we get to take you to all of the different places. So what I'll do today, and certainly Meredith will be throwing questions, or Andrew, questions to me as we go along. Please feel free to ask any questions you'd like, whether it's about what we do at Playhouse, either on our stages, through our education programs, how we're dealing with COVID-19, how do we memorize all those lines, whatever. Feel free to ask those questions. And I'll give you a little bit of history about Playhouse. if you've been in our theater, if you've been around, for a while since we've been around, maybe there'd be some new information, or you might say, oh, I remember when that happened. So I think we'll just get things started, if that's okay. So I'm going to flip the camera around so that you can see what I'm seeing. So we are in our lobby right now. So we are in the brand new theater at Playhouse on the Square. I call it brand new. It's 10 years old. It still has the new car smell as far as I'm concerned. We wanted to make sure that when we built this building, that we were doing it with good urban planning in mind, right? So you are in our front lobby currently. And this is the corner of Cooper and Union. So you're looking at Union Avenue right now, and the cross street right here is Cooper. And we are right up to the street. And we wanted to make sure that we had things like glass involved so that, at this intersection, which is one of the busiest intersections in the city of Memphis, tens of thousands of cars a day go by here. We wanted to make sure that we had glass involved so that every car who stops at this intersection sees the activity that's going on the inside and says, hey, that looks like a lot of fun. We want to go in there too and be a part of that activity, right? And that's part of any good urban planning. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have anything in our lobbies other than me holding a camera staring at the drivers passing by. But this is our lobby. So a brief history of Playhouse, because we're 50 years old. I won't give you all the details. But we started in 1969. It was incorporated as Circuit Playhouse Incorporated by our founder and our first executive producer, Jackie Nichols. He was a high school student at Overton High School. And he may even be on this call. He may be, out there lurking there. So Jackie, if you're listening, don't tell them anything I've said wrong. But anyway, he started this when he was in high school because he and a number of his friends believed that there was a need for young voices to express what they were going through back in the late 60s, right? So we were dealing with the Vietnam War. We were dealing certainly with racial issues. King had been assassinated, the Kennedys, all sex, drugs, rock and roll, all of that involved with the 60s. And these young folks needed a reason to, express their feelings. And so Jackie started this theater, and they began going from place to place, any place that would allow them to perform. So it was always kind of found spaces. And they came up with the name Circuit Players because they would be on a circuit of sorts, right? They would jump from place to place and perform wherever they could perform. Eventually, they were able to find their own digs for very little money, a ballet studio over by what was then Memphis State University. And they started performing there, and they got kicked out because somebody else was going to pay more money to use the space, and they ended up moving to a number of different locations until they settled over on the corner, not the corner, but over on Poplar Avenue, over by Joe's Liquors, the Sputnik sign of Belvedere and Evergreen and Poplar Avenue. India Palace, I think, is right there, and Choices. And so we moved into that space in the 1970s. And started producing really edgy materials. They were doing shows like Marat Sade. They were doing a production of The Boys in the Band, which dealt with homosexuality at a time in Memphis where, even saying that word might get you in trouble. So they were really pushing the boundaries as to the types of shows that they were producing. And the folks at Overton Square in the 70s, so if you know your history of Memphis, right? Overton Square was a place, I'm going to start walking here. Overton Square was a place that was really happening in the 1970s. And the First Fridays outside of New York was there in Overton Square. You had Lafayette's, which had musicians like Billy Joel coming in and singing. You had comedians like Eddie Izzard busking out on the corner of Madison and Cooper. And it was really hopping. It was a place that was bigger, better, faster, stronger than Beale Street at the time, right? So the folks who ran Overton Square saw what Jackie was doing with the Circuit Playhouse. We had named this theater over on Poplar the Circuit Playhouse, and said, we would love for you to bring your theater into the square and become a little bit more commercial with things. And Jackie said no. And the reason was because we were doing these really edgy shows. If we were to start doing more commercial productions, we would get away from some of the messaging that they wanted to do. But they had a deal that Jackie couldn't refuse. They said, we will give you a space to perform in. And so Jackie decided that we could actually exist in two spaces. So they kept the Circuit Playhouse, which was down on Poplar, you know, by Joe's Liquors, the Sputnik sign. And then they went into this space that became available for them, which was the old Lafayette's, which is the current Lafayette's, by the way. And it looked pretty much the same. The stage was where the stage was, you know, the balcony, all of those things, except back in those days, it had no air conditioning and it had no heat. So it was a little daunting, you know, except for one, you know, weekend in April and one weekend in October or something like that. But we officially moved into that location in the late 70s, and that's when we took on the name Playhouse on the Square. So we became this theater that was, you know, on the square, and we did more commercial things there, bigger musicals, although that space is very small, but it was bigger than the place over on Poplar. So we get into the early 80s, and we're quickly outgrowing the Lafayette's space, and we realized that we needed a new theater. And we didn't really know where to go, but we tend to believe that, you know, when one door closes, another one opens. And there was a theater that was suddenly available or becoming available very quickly. And it's the one I'm showing you right now. So for those of you who have been in Memphis, you know, for a while, you might recognize this building. It used to be the Memphian Theater. It was owned by the Lightman family. It was part of the Malco family of theaters. One of a number of great theater houses around the city, some of which are still around. Unfortunately, many were torn down. Anyway, back in the late 70s, early 80s, the Lightman family was getting rid of some of these larger movie theaters because they were moving into the multiplex business, right? And it was also at the time in the 80s when Overton Square, which is just down the street there, and we'll have a better view later of that, when Overton Square was in decline. And they were putting more money into downtown. The Peabody was being renovated. Beale Street was coming back. And unfortunately, there were some developments in Overton Square that were not really good for our city, although, you know, the money was coming in to do what they wanted. And there was a rather notorious figure in Memphis. So for those of you who've been around, you will recognize this name. For those of you who are new, you won't know it, but it was a rather notorious figure by the name of Danny Owens. Danny owned all of the adult bookstores and strip clubs, you know, around the city, mostly down by the airport. And he purchased this building. He purchased the Memphian Theater from the Lightman family, because he wanted to make, and I'm putting them in air quotes, an art house out of it, right? And I think he did show maybe one, you know, foreign film, but that certainly was not going to be the goal of the kind of movie that was going to be shown in this particular building. And again, this was when Overton Square down that way was in decline. Well, as what happens to a lot of folks in his particular business, he got in trouble. With the law, primarily with taxes, as I understand it. And I also understand that his brother, I don't know, killed an FBI agent or something, you know, really horrible. And they got in trouble with the law. And Danny, I say Danny like I know him, my friend Danny, Danny needed cash because his lawyers wouldn't take anything but cash. And you can understand why. So this building became for sale. It was up for sale. At the same time that Jackie and our board of directors, who are currently down at the old Lafayette's, the Playhouse on the Square, were looking for a new building. This building was appraised at $300,000 at the time. And we had some wonderful board members, Gene Katz, many of you will recognize that name, Buck Clark, you know, the Clark building, Clark family there. We're on our board of directors. They knew development, they knew money, things like that. And they said, well, what about this? Danny needs cash. How, and this building is valued at 300 grand. how about we offer him half of that in cash and he donates the other half of that to us, because we're a not-for-profit entity by that time, right? And because he needed the cash, he said, okay. And he wanted to use that other $150 donation kind of for, karma, I guess. And, he could put things up on a billboard saying, I'm helping not-for-profit theater in Memphis, Tennessee, and, try to sway whatever jury was going to be in that trial. Well, of course, it didn't help him. It certainly helped us. We raised $150,000 very quickly. We paid him. He went to jail along with his brother. I think they're still there, perhaps. And for one of the interesting things in the deal was he wanted to make sure that we had 8 tickets reserved for every performance under his name. And so we moved into that building in 1985, and I think we kept 8 tickets reserved for every performance for at least 10 years until we finally realized we just don't think he's coming back. So we moved out of the old Lafayette's down in Overton Square, and we moved into this building 1 week later in 1985, and we moved the Playhouse on the Square name to there. So we have the Playhouse, Playhouse on the Square here at 51 South Cooper, where you're looking now. We have the Circuit Playhouse, which is over at 1711 Poplar Avenue, over by, the Sputnik sign. Well, we got into the late 1990s, and we realized that we were limiting ourselves as it pertained to our ability to do technical things on our stages. We had great talent. We had great actors, great designers, great directors, choreographers, but we were limited by the things we could do in our space because, quite frankly, we were in 2 converted movie houses, this being the Memphian Theater. And by the way, the place over on Poplar Avenue used to be the old Guild Theater. I think it was called the Ritz Theater, and it was also called the Evergreen Theater, which was a movie theater, right? So movie theaters don't have fly space above you. They don't have wing space off to either side. So there's very little offstage space. So that was limiting us. And in the 90s, late 90s, we were seeing wonderful developments in Memphis. The Cannon Center was coming online for all these great, artistic events and galas and the symphony. We saw the opera get their place, out east on Humphreys, and we saw the ballet getting their great place at the time out on Trinity. We said it really is time for us to have our own, crown, our own jewel in the crown of the arts in Memphis. So we said, what are we going to do? We can renovate these theaters, or we can try and build a new one. So we got a grant from the Community Foundation of Memphis to see if there was going to be the ability, A, to raise the money, and B, where would we put this theater? And we were recruited heavily by downtown. This was before the Halloran Center. This was before there was a lot of new stuff going into warehouses downtown on South Main. We were recruited to go out east, out past Perkins. Certainly there was money out there. The fact of the matter is, given the types of shows that we do at Playhouse, we do a lot of different kinds of shows, quite frankly, that may not play as well out east. And downtown was extremely expensive and closed in. You'd have to either renovate a warehouse, and of course parking is an issue and things like that. So we didn't know that this place across the street was going to become available to us, and it did. Suddenly it was up for sale. And so we said, okay, let's go. And it was owned by a conglomeration of about 15 different lawyers, which was going to be a challenge right out of the gate because it wasn't just one representative. So of course we went straight over to them and said, you should donate all of that property to us. It was the old Robert E. Lee, used goods place, and it was a 5-story building that was owned by TPI, which was the parent company of Shoney's, I think Perkins, something like that. They would not donate it to us, but they gave us a really good deal. So they sold the building to us in the early 2000s for $1.1 million. The city tore down the old Robert E. Lee joint, and we soon started raising money to build our theater, which is the state-of-the-art Playhouse on the Square. So just to kind of continue the tour then, you can see what we've done. So currently we are in one of our lobbies. This is one of our art galleries. There is obviously no art on the wall right now because this weekend we were supposed to have our 43rd original art auction. Our largest fundraiser of the year was supposed to be tomorrow. Obviously that was canceled. So there's sadly, no artwork on our walls. That said though, we have 6 different galleries in our 2 theater facilities. We've got one across the street at the Circuit Playhouse. And then, oh, and by the way, so when we built the new theater, we moved the name Playhouse on the Square here. We call that building there the Circuit Playhouse. And then what used to be the Circuit Playhouse over on Poplar is now called the Evergreen Theater, taking back the name that it had when it was a movie theater. So we'll move into the theater here. And you guys are going to keep me on time because, you know, we don't want this to be a 5-hour tour. Although I could do that if you dare me, but I won't. All right, we're moving into the theater. So many of you have been in this theater, hopefully, and if not, you're going to come to our theater. So you are orchestra section right now, looking at our stage. So this was the theater that we had designed. It was designed by a company and a gentleman by the name of John Morris Architects. He was the gentleman who designed Steppenwolf in Chicago. So if you've been to Chicago, Steppenwolf, Laurie Metcalf started there, John Malkovich, Gary Sinise, a lot of folks have started there and you know, gone on to Broadway and you know, movies and things like that. And they still go back and do gigs at Steppenwolf. But John had started off as a scenic designer in theater. And he realized he wasn't making enough money. So he went back to school and got his degree in, you know, all the different things you need degrees in to build theaters. And that's all he does, is he designs theaters and he retrofits buildings for theaters. But he comes with a wealth of knowledge as a scenic designer saying, I know what a building needs in order for a theater to run well. You know, rather than just jamming a theater into some kind of pretty facade outside, and it doesn't really make sense on the inside. He said you kind of build it from the inside and you go out. So this particular theater has many things that a typical audience may not know unless they've been on a tour like this. So you're in the orchestra right now looking at the stage. That's a 40-foot proscenium right there. So from side to side, it's 40 feet. And it goes back about another 40 feet to that back wall. Auditorium holds 347 seats. So there are 250 downstairs and there are 97 upstairs. So you are seeing what an audience member would see right there. And by the way, Andrew and Meredith, if folks are asking questions, just interrupt me, okay? Because I will keep talking otherwise. So now we're going to take you all on stage. You all can now say you've been on stage at Playhouse on the Square. Walking onto the stage. Make sure I don't trip as I go on. All right. So you are on the set of well, not the set, but the painted stage of what was the Book of Will, which we had to close back in March, halfway through its run, unfortunately. Took the set down, but the paint is still on the stage. But here is the view that you would have if you were an actor on our stage, certainly with the lights on. So all of these are the seats that are there, and I'm saying that obviously because there's something about those seats that's very interesting. That is our sound location. So our sound designer mixes live shows from up there. So if it's a musical, he's balancing orchestra and body mics and all that kind of good stuff. And our balcony with our boxes. And as I said, there are 97 seats. So up there. So there's some interesting architectural things here, right? So when John Morris designed this building, he also works with a company called Tulaskey, which is also out of Chicago. All Tulaskey does is they work on acoustics for performing arts facilities. And so all of the design that's in here, which is actually pretty cool, is done with certainly, you know, with visuals in mind, but it's also done with acoustics in mind. So when you look at all of the different materials, just kind of going over to this part here, you see wood. Let's try to get my finger in here so you can see it. The wood right there and up there. You see bare cement. You see carpet. I'm saying obvious things, but it all means something. On the back wall, there's fabric. All of those are for acoustical reasons. Even the wood that is up on the facade of our balcony is either beveled or has holes drilled in it. I don't know if you can see the holes from this shot. So that the sound, when it comes off of the stage, bounces or is absorbed, in a way that you can speak in a normal volume in our theater from the stage, and anyone in the house, in the auditorium, can hear what's being said. You can speak at a normal volume, and they will hear that. Now, obviously, with musicals and things like that, we would have amplified instruments, so we have to amplify the voices too. But we have speakers for that, and there are speakers both low, up high, around the auditorium itself, and up in the back as well. So all of these are designed, even down to the seats. So all of these seats were designed with sound in mind as well. Every one of these seats is engineered to absorb the same amount of sound energy that a human body absorbs, which means it sounds exactly the same whether this house or auditorium is full or whether it's empty or half full. It sounds exactly the same because that chair absorbs the same amount of sound energy as a human body does. That's pretty ingenious, right? Certainly, something I never studied, but obviously acousticians do. Even down to the cement. That's brutalistic style, by the way. That style of cement with the holes in it. But that's to bounce sound. The fabric is to absorb sound. Even the carpeting on the floor is there to absorb, certain types of sound and things like that. So pretty cool. And those are the types of things that an engineer would want in a theater, and certainly as a producer or as an actor-director, those are tools that come in very handy to make sure that our audience enjoys the production. So that's the auditorium. Let's look at the stage a little bit. So you are on, virtually, a sprung wood floor. A sprung wood floor is done so that basically we don't get shin splints when we are dancing on here. One of the groups that utilizes our space is Ballet Memphis. We've also had New Ballet Ensemble, we've had Collage, we've had different art, dance groups in here. We want to make sure that they are not getting shin splints. In fact, when we built the theater, we made sure that we extended this stage back 3 feet to accommodate dance flooring for dance companies, because a lot of times they have very specific parameters, for their dance floor, right? So sprung wood floor basically means that underneath there is a slab of cement, and on top of that cement are 2x4s set on their sides, and on top of those 2x4s is an absorbent wood type material, and on top of that is more planking, plywood, and on top of that is another material which I don't know the name of. I'm sure some of you do out there, so that when you are dancing on the floor, things bounce a little bit underneath you to make sure that you don't get shin splints. So, keeping those things in mind for the actors. We have, looks like 16 trapdoors on this stage. So it's a little hard to see. You might see the lines right in here. Those are trapdoors. So there's a trap room underneath if we need to have people coming out of the basement or out of the depths of hell onto the stage. They can come up through the floor. And we also have an orchestra pit, which is right here. It's covered right now because for Book of Will, that was a non-musical. But we have an orchestra pit that goes almost from proscenium, that wall, to the other one, which will hold up to about 20 musicians. It gets a little cramped down there if they're all playing, stand-up basses or something. But our orchestras are generally anywhere from 4 to 10, give or take. And they all fit down there. And sometimes we have that orchestra pit covered and we don't see the orchestra. Oftentimes we'll have it open, or one of the traps will be open. We see the conductor's head might be there. So that's the stage. Off stage left. So you're in school right now. You're all being homeschooled. Off stage left means if you are facing the audience and you are the actor, this way is stage left. That way is stage right, okay, if you're facing the audience. So now you all have homeschooling for today. Off stage left, this is our rail lines here. So we will bring in a lot of electrics from above because we have a fly space or our fly loft. Obvious names in theater. We fly things that way, so it's called the flies. The wings are off to the sides like they are your wings. So this is a pulley system, a weight system for pulleys. Obviously, we've got 40 of them in this space, and they all lead up to a pulley system up there, which we're going to go to later. And then we fly in many different things, or we hang many different things, whether they're lights, electrics, soft goods, so fabric, things, drapes, all that kind of good stuff. We might have cycs or drops, cycloramas, things that we reflect light off of or through. Drops, we might have set pieces, like, for instance, those pieces may have been hung for the last show from one of the pipes above us. And it's a counterweight system. So a weakling like me can pull on one of those ropes and pull an entire, let's say 500-pound piece of set up into the air. And it's a counterweight system because what they'll do is they will put, and I don't know what the exact ratio is, but they will put, let's say, 400 pounds of weight here, or 400 and let's say 90 pounds of weight there, so that when I pull that rope, I'm only pulling 10 pounds on a 500-pound piece that might be up in the air. I probably have those numbers wrong, but it's something along those lines. Like I say, so a little weakling like me can move set pieces up into the air. One of the interesting things they did with this building, so again, we opened in 2010. We live on a fault line. This is your homeschooling again today, right? So the New Madrid Fault is your trivia question for today. We live close enough to that we have to worry about things like earthquakes. And, God forbid it never happens, but we have to plan for that, and, building codes demand that we do. So there's these really interesting pieces, a part of our architecture. And we thought when they were putting it all in, as we were watching it from across the street, when they were putting all these beams in, we went, oh, those flanges are so artistic and so cool. I bet that, they're doing it because we're a theater. Well, no, we were idiots when we said that. The reason is that's for earthquake protection. Those flanges are built so that, in the event of an earthquake, these walls give a little bit rather than collapsing in, because as you can see, there are no weight-bearing columns. We can't have any weight-bearing columns in this big space. So those architectural pieces, while they are very artistic and cool looking, are actually serving a very important purpose. That said, we've had, I bet, a handful of shows where we did not put anything in the way of our back wall because it looked really cool under lights. So, we get a secondary benefit other than the building not falling in on us. It's artistic. So that's kind of cool. Off stage right. Remember, there's your other thing you learned today. Off stage right. If you're facing the audience, that way is stage right. Okay, that way is downstage, back at you, that's upstage. Okay, so this is our theater. By the way, those lights up there, and we'll go up there in a minute too, that's our booth. That is where our stage manager calls the show. Stage manager is in charge of running the show. She'll be on headset, talk to people backstage. She'll be talking to folks running the spotlights, saying, light cue 45, go. And somebody pushes a button and the light cues go. Or, scenic cue 3, go. And somebody on stage will move that scenic piece on that go. So here's our stage here. All right, we'll go back to the scene shop now. Oh, I'm gonna do a little detour because I'll be honest with you, I have a Diet Coke sitting over here that I don't want to leave behind because I'm talking nonstop. All right. Important things in life, right? Okay, so we are moving toward the scene shop. So when we built the new theater, obviously we have sets on our stage, right? And we have 3 stages upon which we produce our shows. We've got Playhouse on the Square, which is the new state-of-the-art theater, which you're just walking out of. We have the Circuit Playhouse, which is across the street, which I showed you for a while we were in the lobby. And then we have TheaterWorks, which I'll show you from a rooftop a little bit later as well too. So we perform 18 shows on our 3 stages. In addition to that, we have 2 educational tours that go out into the schools. So we're producing 20 shows a season. And we have to build scenery for all of those shows, and we have to build costumes and, you know, lights and sound, whatever the design elements might be. So we build all of our sets in this space. So we had to build this space. We had been across the street, and again, for those of you who've been around Memphis for a while, you might remember the old DeVoe paint store, which was next to the Memphian Theater. We renovated that, we purchased that. And we had a very small scene shop over there. It was about a third of the size of this room. And we would build things in pieces, and we couldn't put them together until we brought them to the stage. In this scene shop, we can build an entire set in here because it will fit the size of our stage. And we can roll it, if we need to, through that garage door. There's another garage door on the other side of that, which brings us directly to the stage through that door right there. So we can make sure all the pieces fit together, all of those things. At any given time, during normal time, we would have 2 shows on our stages. So the scene shop has to repair those and do upkeep. And at the same time, they're building at least 2 shows in this space, possibly 3. So there's a lot of work that these ladies and gentlemen go through in order to keep our scenery safe and to keep it, you know, pretty and functional and all those good things. We paint in here. Obviously, there's carpentry. We do a lot of welding in here. There's electrics, all kinds of things that we have in here. Our technical director, production manager, Philip Hewen, runs the shop. He has various assistants. We've got a master carpenter, a welder, electrician, all of those folks that help us with various aspects of putting that scenery, which, you know, coordinates quite tightly with our lights, because obviously if you've got to have practical lighting on stage, you know, a lamp on that desk, somebody's got to wire that. We just don't have plugs everywhere on the stage. So electrics become very important as well too. So this is our scene shop. We built this when we built the new theater. It's not really attached, even though we walked through the stage and into the scene shop. It's really not really attached. Yes, it's attached, you know, on rooftops and things like that, but the walls don't necessarily, quite frankly, touch. So going down, so that was the scene shop. This it used to be an alleyway. This was the alley between the 5-story building that's been around since, you know, at least the 50s, and our brand new theater. This is what we call our crossover. And this is one of the most interesting parts of the tour for me, I think, because you get to get a little bit nerdy on this, but it makes a lot of sense. So this is our crosswalk, our crossover. This is where actors will come out this door, and if they need to get to the other side of the stage, they'll run down that hallway and enter the other side. So we have the junction of 3 buildings. Brand new theater here. So that's one separate building. We've got the scene shop here, separate building. And if you go down a little further, yes, there's a roof overhead. So yes, they're really attached, but engineering-wise, they're not. If you go down this hallway a little bit more, and you get past this you know, cement block here, that area there, which looks kind of purple, that's the 5-story building. This literally was an alleyway where cars used to drive. And none of these 3 buildings actually touch structurally. There's actually a gap in between all of them. And the reason is very simple. So when you build a theater and you have that big old room in there where you just were, when it's wintertime, you got to put heat in there. And when it's, you know, summertime, you got to put air conditioning in there. And it's a big old room, and you need big old machines to do that. Well, those big old machines are big, and they make a lot of noise, and they create a lot of vibration. Well, you don't want to put those machines on top of this theater, because that vibration will come through the building, and while you're watching that love scene on stage and it's very quiet, and suddenly the air kicks in, you know, you hear this big, huge noise, and it's a disturbance. Well, so what they did when John Morris designed this space, he said, okay, let's do this. You've got this 5-story building here, made out of cement. It's 5 stories high. Let's put all of your HVAC machinery on top of the roof of this 5-story building. And we'll put them basically on springs, right? And so that's what they did. They put 3 very large units on top of this building to absorb all of the vibration of those machines when they kick on, so that when that air comes into this building, we don't hear the noise from the machines. But there's one more layer to it. When you push a lot of air through a tube, if any of you are musicians, it makes noise, right? A pipe organ, those pipes make noise. You blow air through it. A flute, a clarinet, tuba, whatever. So this room above, which kind of connects the 2 buildings, has a bunch of machinery in it that takes all of the air coming out of those big machines that are vibrating and puts them through all different kinds of baffles and twists and turns, so that by the time it gets into the new building, it just drops into the room without sound. And it doesn't just drop it into the room, it pays attention to what the temperature is. So if in the new theater I set the thermostat, let's say at 70 degrees, and it's 95 degrees outside, I'll set the thermostat at 70. It doesn't kick the air out at 70 degrees, 30 feet above you. It kicks the air out at, let's say, 52 degrees, so that by the time it drops down to you sitting in your seat, it's 70 degrees. So it's all computer driven through all of the stuff that goes on in this room to make sure that all of that heat and air that gets into you in there makes you comfortable, but it's not disturbing you with all that different kind of sound. I think that's pretty ingenious. And if any of you are engineers out there, I'm sure you're going, well, duh. But it's putting those 2 things together is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we're very fortunate that we had engineers to do that. So this is stage left of our auditorium. Those are the rails, taking all those up. Okay, now I'll take you to a place where another place you're not allowed to go unless you're one of the actors in our show. And this is our green room. So now we are stepping into the 5-story building. This used to be the fire escape to the back of this 5-story building, and you're going into our green room. Green room is where actors hang out before, during, and after the show. So they put their costumes on, which will be upstairs. We're not going to go up there today, but the dressing rooms, right? They'll come down the stairs and they'll go into the green room. This is our hallway where we have signed the walls. If you've been backstage at the Orpheum, various different theaters, it's a traditional thing that we do. And so these are a lot of our shows. My name's on a few of these that are in here, but many of our shows. And this hallway, and these are the stairs that goes up to our dressing room. But here you enter our green room. Now, as I said, you're in the 5-story building. It used to be an office building. It has about 7,000 square feet on each floor. So right now you're in about 3,500 square feet of it. What we wanted to do when we took over the 5-story was we wanted to make sure that we were reutilizing as much as we could from the space. We believe very much in maintaining any sort of historical quality to something, certainly, but we didn't want to rip everything out if it, quite frankly, could be used. And so this used to be office space. We came in and we put walls in here. And so these are, the couches that we've gotten used ourselves. Our actors, hang out in here, they'll sleep in here, they'll eat in here before, during, and after the show. Also, all of our tech folks have offices down here. So our sound designer, our production manager, tech director, our production stage manager, all of our tech folks have their offices, which again, used to be offices for TPI way back when. We have a conference room where we hold conference meetings, production meetings, things like that. So, green room, why do they call it a green room? Again, this is your learning for today. Well, back in the day, the room used to be green, right? Well, back in the day, they didn't necessarily have rooms set aside at theaters. Oftentimes in early theaters, the green room, the place where they waited, was outside somewhere. So there's really no straight answer as to why they call it a green room, other than in the beginning of theater, they were probably outside where there were leaves and greenery. So they were in the green room. Also, too, you go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, some of the cheapest paint, which was made out of plants, was green. The harder materials to get to paint were, minerals, which would be red. Red was always a very challenging color to paint anything back in those days. So probably the reason it was the green room was because, again, we were in theater, didn't have a lot of money. Best thing we could do is paint it with cheap paint, and that was usually green. We happen to have a green painted room. Most of the green rooms I've ever been in throughout my, 35-year history as an actor have been painted some other color than green. So sound equipment goes in here. Obviously there's nothing there. In a musical, our musicians, our singers, our actors would be putting on headsets, something similar to that. Okay, so take you back out of this building. And again, those are the walls of signature. The crossover stage. And now we go back out to where we started part of this. And this is an area you won't get to go in, where you are currently. Looking back towards the green room. Fire exits, things like that. And we go back out into the lobby. Okay. So obviously very interconnected for all of our staff. We'll go upstairs now and look at some of the other spaces. So we call this the grand staircase. It's not as grand as most grand staircases, but it's the grandest thing we have in our building as it pertains to staircases. So we'll call it that. Again, a lot of glass. This is one of my favorite places to come and watch people. You just get to see all the interesting things that happen at the corner of Union and Cooper. Hopefully no accidents. So I'm going to turn away from that right away in case I get something on video. All right, so we're going up our grand staircase. We're going up into our second story. I mentioned that we have 6 art galleries. Normally our big fundraiser would be tomorrow, our art auction. And, it's our largest fundraiser. So we get, about 175 pieces from about 150 artists. And we take their artwork and we auction it off and we make money. But we also believe that, we don't just want them to give us their artwork and they get nothing in return. So we give them something in return. We give them a 16-pack subscription. Hello, there I am. 16-pack subscription, and we allow them to have one of our galleries for the run of our show. So they can have their art show on our walls for the run of a show, and they could sell their artwork. We don't take, any commission or anything like that. And so, we get their art and they get our art, and we believe in that idea. So we have 6 art galleries that allow them to put their artwork up on the walls. So I just walked you into our event room. This is on the 2nd floor. We use this space for a lot of different things. Again, sprung wood floor, so we use it for rehearsals. When the ballet is in here, they'll have bars in here to do their stretches and développés and all those other French words. We also use it for our rehearsals so that we might tape a set out. We'll take tape and tape the floor. That's why this floor is dirty right now. In fact, we're about to paint it to get it clean again. But we'll have the set taped out in here so that we can make sure we're walking to where the steps would be or where that table might be in that particular set. We also obviously have mirrors in here so that when we are dancing, we can see what we're doing. We also use this space for parties. We rent it out. We've had everything from weddings to wedding receptions to concerts. All kinds of different things have happened in this space as a rental space. This is our Stars of Tomorrow wall. One of our fundraisers is that we sell stars. If you have interest in that, just go to our website, Playhouse on the Square. We'll be happy to get you up on our wall of fame stars. So again, glass, right? So we said we wanted to make sure that we have glass everywhere we go so that when people are down on the street, they see all the activity that's happening up here and they get to say, hey, that looks like a lot of fun. I wonder why they're dancing up there. Or wow, there's a sword fight happening up there. We should check that out. That's why we have this glass up here on the 2nd floor as well. There's a little police activity down there. I'll scan past that. We get back to Cooper and Union right there. The original design of our theater had these 2 walls all full of glass as well. We did some value engineering though, because quite frankly, it was going to be too expensive. To have that much glass, you have to have that much more stability in your building. So, more materials to actually hold it up. And quite frankly, the HVAC bill was going to go through the roof. because you've got sunlight coming through, things like that. So value engineered it. We put walls back in there, but we did keep the window as well. All right, so this is our event room. Again, one of our 6 galleries back over there. Bars upstairs and downstairs. And we'll go back across this way toward where our balcony is. We're going to walk into our balcony, but we're going to get there from the other side. This is another one of our art galleries. This art gallery is called the Memphis College of Art Gallery. When we built this building, we were raising money back in the 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, 8. We had a major donor who said, I will give you a major donation if you will allow one of your art galleries to be utilized by the Memphis College of Art. And we said, absolutely. So for many years, this gallery was utilized by MCA for their students, their alumni, obviously faculty, anybody, any kind of art show they wanted to put up here. So for many years, we had their artwork up here. Unfortunately, that's not going to be happening after they close down, which is very, very sad. But many wonderful art shows up in this space. Circuit Playhouse across the street, looking towards downtown. And we get back into the theater. I'm just going to kind of swing through the balcony here. You're going to see a little bit of the same that you saw before. But from this location, you are now running sound for our show. All the equipment. There's usually a large piece of equipment here with all of the various microphones hooked up to it, but our sound engineer runs everything from this spot. So he is seeing and hearing what you are seeing and hearing in the theater, literally right next to him. So he runs everything from here, soundboard, obviously everything's computerized. And we walk across the balcony area, looking at the stage. What's above the stage? We're gonna go up there in a minute. I think that was Meredith's favorite place right there when we did the dry run, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we'll go through here. I'm gonna walk fast now so we can get to where we're going. Monitors everywhere so people can leave the theater and still hear everything that's going in. Oh, interesting thing, area of refuge. We thought that was a joke when we moved into the theater. Hopefully I'm in the stairwell now, so if I fuzz out, hopefully it won't be for very long. We thought that was a joke, because we had never heard of area of refuge. We thought, oh, I bet they misspelled it. It meant area of refuse. Like, this is where we're supposed to bring our trash. And the architect said, no, that's not what that is. That's a place of safety. So that when you come out here, for ADA compliance and things like that, you can talk to the firemen out on the street, or, whatever you need to do, you can do it from this stairwell that's more secure, against fire and earthquake than other places. So what we did when we opened the theater, we had tours with the fire department to make them aware of what our building looks like and where the stairwells were. And one of the first questions they asked us was, what's an area of refuge? So we knew more about the fire stuff at that time than our friends at the fire department. Okay, so this is a place you'll never see. This is that room I was telling you about where all the air goes and gets shoved around in different directions, right? But we also store all kinds of goofy things back here. We had somebody donate a bunch of animal heads to us, and they said, hey, do you have any, the Three Stooges are down there. Do you have any use for that? And we went, sure. And so we have actually used these animal heads in various productions. If you ever see an animal head in any one of our shows, the next time you don't see an animal head, it's stored up in this room where we take all that air and shove it in different directions so that you don't hear it when you get into the theater. Every now and then we'll bring a new person up to this space, but we won't have the lights on. We'll say, open the door, and the first thing they run into is this animal head there. Sometimes we'll put this guy right there too. Anyway, the trickery of theater. All right, so here's another area you won't be allowed to go to. This is where all of our technical staff go. Our third floor, this is the tech area. Leave that there. Okay, so our booth is here. And this is where we run spotlights. Our stage manager will run the show. Again, she calls the show from here. This will be that third floor. So here's one of our spotlights right here. And by the way, if you're interested in volunteering, this is a volunteer position. If you would like to, learn to run a spotlight and come run one of our shows with us, you can do that. So our spot op is here, and they'll be running lights down to the stage there. He or she is in contact with our stage manager, who lives in this space. And stage manager will be on headset, using different computers, different boards, pressing different buttons. All of this is sound separated as well too. So when these windows are closed, the people in the auditorium can't hear us. Not that we're up here, shouting and yelling, but it certainly helps in terms of sound. This window happens to be open, so I can take you right out over the stage. It makes Meredith a little woozy. She got a little sick last time I did that to her. So keep an eye on her. If she falls down, somebody get her. Catwalks, we're gonna walk out there in a second, Meredith, so that'll be just for you. Ooh, thank you, Mike. Yes, thank you, you're welcome. All right, we go back in here, another spot op. And again, volunteer position, folks. If you're interested, shoot us an email and we will get you up into this booth and get you on a spotlight. This is not a volunteer. Here's your woozy part right here, Meredith. Oh, right. So we come up here to hang lights, obviously. All kinds of equipment up here. Takes us out over the audience. Even I have to duck up here and I'm short. Yeah, out over the audience. Now we've done lots of things from this position as well too. When we did hairspray and there's a big balloon drop at the end, we drop them off of this catwalk that brings us down to the stage there. Right. Just different equipment up in the air that you can never reach other than coming up into this catwalk. So, and I'm looking at both at the camera and where I'm walking, so I don't, end up being a catastrophe on live feed. Yeah, this is a pretty cool space up here. Every now and then I will come up here during a show, but the fact of the matter is they will see me if I do. So it has to be like a very specific loud point where this is really dark up here and they won't hear or see me. But it's really fun to eavesdrop on audience members from up in this area. And I can always see when you've got your cell phone on when you know you shouldn't. So, all right. Oop, duck mic. Okay, so that's the booth. We'll go back here, take it to another area that you are not allowed to go to. And this is called our pin rail gallery. Pin rail, we store things everywhere, obviously lights in here, but the pin rail takes us out. We are now on stage left, up high over the stage, right? We call this a pin rail. I hope you can see this in the start. That right there is a pin. So put yourself on an old-timey sailing ship, right? And you're pirates. And you've got to hoist the sails. You had pins in a pin rail right here, made out of wood, obviously. The pin is, not this particular pipe, but on the wooden ships, you would have these pins that you would put in place, and you would hoist the sail, and you would have to tie off the ropes on those pins. They're also called pegs. If you're that old-timey pirate on the ship and you had the whale bite off your one leg, they replaced it with a peg, and that's why they called you peg leg. But those are the pins, and that's why we call this the pin rail. So what we do is we tie off a lot of things up here. We might put things up here, what we say permanently, just means for the run of the show. We might have electrics up here that never move for the show, right? So right down there, you see some lights that are hung. If this were the run of a show, those might be frozen there for the entire run of the show, and we tie it off to make sure that nothing moves. Or electric cabling, which this happens to be, will wrap up here. But we also put other machinery up here, like fog machines. There's fog machines here. So when you see a haze on the stage, it's actually a fog machine that goes through that fan that pushes it down to stage. And we can put that fog machine or that fan anywhere. We can have it come up from the stage. This particular one was set to have it come from above, to put a haze into the air so that when we put lights in the air, it reflects and refracts off of the haze that's in the theater. This is also a really fun place to watch a show. If you donate a major amount of money to Playhouse on the Square, we'll take you up here during the run of a show. I'm kidding. No, I'm not. All right, so this is the pin rail. This is the pin rail. There's one across the way as well, and there's actually one above us, which I'm afraid to go on to because you have to climb a metal ladder over there, and I'm just too afraid to do that with a phone in my hand. Pin rail, pin rail. You're all taking notes, right? Because we made a test at the end. Meredith said she wanted homeschooling for all of this, so I hope all your kids are watching. This could be your theater day, right? The arts day. All right, now I'm going to get into an elevator to take us to the rooftop. So when we tried this on the dry run, we didn't lose any connection, but I'm just telling you in case. So you know that I didn't fall off the pin rail.
Hey, Michael, are the animal
Yes.
heads from that office supply place that was on Union?
Say that one more time.
Michelle wants to know, are the animal heads from that office supply place that was on Union?
I don't know. We've had them for a number of years. We get donations for a lot of things. Obviously, we'll get animal heads and statues. We get a lot of clothing donations. Oh, sorry about that. That's telling me the door is open. We get a lot of clothing donations. And what we do is we process that through whatever the appropriate shop will be like. So if it's clothes, we send them to the costume shop, and the costume shop decides whether that's a donation we need. Same thing with props. I can't tell you who gave us those animal heads, but shoot me an email, I will find out. What, did you recognize one of those animal heads?
One more question while you take us on the roof. Is there a typical time that is required to prepare for a given play? Like, how long does it typically take to coordinate all the moving parts between actors and actresses' lines, stage setup, and et cetera?
Great question. So, as I said, we do 18 shows, right? So that number varies, but there is kind of a template that we use. So if we are doing a non-musical, we will generally rehearse 4.5 weeks prior to opening that show. And then we open it. If we're doing a musical, we generally do 5.5 weeks. And that gives us a week of music, and then the rest 4.5 weeks to block, do the movement, the dance choreography, all that kind of stuff. So that's generally what we do. When it comes to the children's tours, it's a little bit different because we rehearse those in the morning, and they're not usually as long. Sometimes they're 4 weeks, sometimes they're 3 weeks, but that's generally the template. Non-musicals 4.5 weeks, musicals are 5.5 weeks.
And Whitney Joe chimed in and said that the animal heads are from the Pink Palace, which is great because what's cool about Memphis too is the collaboration between the arts, which hopefully we can discuss too.
Absolutely. What a great transition. And yeah, thank you, Whitney, for making sure I'm saying all the right things. I'm sure she's corrected a few things on there. That's great. Whitney Joe is our managing director at Playhouse. One of the wonderful things, as I mentioned earlier, we like to reuse things. I'm up on the rooftop, obviously, right? We like to reuse things if we can. And in fact, when we originally had this building designed, the rooftop was going to be a much more interactive space at the time. Again, we had to do some value engineering just because when we were building the theater, when we were raising that money was 2008. So your friends out there might know what happened in 2008. We had that great recession, right? We were very fortunate that we had donors who still followed through on their donations, but we had to pull back on some of the plans. What we were able to do, though, we realized that Le Bonheur at the time was going through a renovation, and they were getting rid of pavers from their building, and they were going to toss them. And we said, wait a minute, don't toss them, we can use them. So we took their pavers and we paved our rooftop, but we ran out. So there's nothing wrong with this part of the rooftop. We just didn't have any more pavers to do that. At some point, we'll raise a little bit more money. We'll finish this off. We'll probably, put more of a garden up here. At one point, there was going to be a green wall, a water feature, all kinds of wonderful, expensive things. But as a nonprofit, you have to make the right choices. And we, like I said, we value engineered it at the time. So here we are on the rooftop. One of the very wonderful, unique things I think about Memphis is how all of the arts groups and not-for-profits in general get along very well. It's not the same in other metropolitan areas. And I know that because I talked to many of my cohorts in other cities. And they said, Mike, we just don't have the same camaraderie with our fellow arts groups as you do in Memphis. You know, I had a meeting yesterday online with all of the arts leaders, many of the arts leaders, and it was, you know, from the ballet and new ballet and opera and the Orpheum and GPAC and Collage and Hattiloo Theatre, all of us talking about our challenges, talking about our successes, how we can make this place a better place. We have a group called the Cultural Coalition in Memphis, which is a broader span of nonprofit arts leaders, but it includes other non-arts groups that have artistic components like the Civil Rights Museum, Botanic Gardens, Dixon, you know, places like that. And we meet monthly. We have not met monthly the last couple of months because of COVID, but we have a meeting next week online. And we talk about our challenges. We talk about our successes. We commiserate, you know, we celebrate and we bitch, quite frankly, about, you know, those challenges that we have. And we're very honest about it because we believe in what many of you out there, you know, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to all of you listening, but we really believe that rising water floats all boats. And why not work together instead of against each other, especially now, but, you know, even not during a time of COVID-19, we do much better when we work together. We try not to duplicate services. They certainly overlap. So this juncture right here is a wonderful place I like to come and show people because it shows the development of Overton Square. So you're on the rooftop now of Playhouse, right? That's the ceiling of the auditorium where we were. And we look across, and that's the Circuit Playhouse. If you go back behind, it's a little bit hard to see, but I'm see if I get a better angle here. If you look over that HVAC system on top of the Circuit Playhouse, right behind there, you can kind of see that gray, greenish roof between the trees. That's the Circuit Playhouse. We created the Circuit Playhouse over 20 years ago because there was a need in Memphis for small arts groups to have a place to perform. We got the land donated, we got the materials donated, we had wonderful funding from the Genium Foundation, and we built this theater black box space, malleable space. It holds about 100 folks, and there are at any given year 8 groups that utilize that space, performance groups, and so that's called TheaterWorks. So we have that space down behind us, and then if you look, there's the garage that they built a number of years ago. We've got the Hattiloo Theatre, which is the African American theater here in town. Ekendial Ben-Daly, good friend of ours. He moved his theater from downtown on Monroe down to Overton Square. And then as you look down Cooper towards Madison, you see that curved rooftop. That's Ballet Memphis. So they moved to where the old French Quarter Suites was, if you remember the French Quarter Suites. So in this area, and of course, this brand new construction here, which we are very excited by, this brand new hotel that's coming back into Overton Square. All of this wonderful development going on. And there's really an impetus for this development, right? So we've been in the square since the late 70s, down where Lafayette's used to be. And then we've been in this space across the street, and now we're in this space here. We were in, Playhouse on the Square was in this area when Overton Square was rising, and then when it really started to drop in energy. And we stuck around. And when we decided to build the brand new theater and decided to keep it here in Midtown, one of our board members was Bob Loeb. And you may recognize his name. He's with Loeb Properties. And we raised this money in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. $15.5 million we raised to build this theater and to build up our endowment. He said, if you guys can do that and stay in this location, I think I can invest in the rest of Overton Square. Now, at the time, Overton Square was, the majority of it was owned by an out-of-town investor. They lived in Colorado. They didn't give a crap about what was happening in Overton Square. It was a loss for them. It was a tax write-off. They didn't live here. And it was, being underused, and it was, being run down. Bob finally got, folks in line to purchase all of what was left of Overton Square from that out-of-town ownership. And he, promised that he would not just start tearing buildings down, but that he would renovate and reuse, which of course made, a lot of other organizations very happy in town. Heritage, Memphis Heritage, and certainly us, we were happy that we weren't tearing down buildings to put up, grocery stores or, supermarkets, things like that. We wanted to keep the character. So, and then we needed parking. So he said, I'm going to get the city involved. They got the feds involved. And they also solved a lot of problems with that garage right there. If you don't know, there's a 1 million cubic foot retention pond underneath that garage. Running under that garage, which you don't see, but going under all of this pavement and, underneath Union Avenue, is Old Lick Creek. Lick Creek is a drainage creek, basically, that goes from South Memphis through Midtown. It goes through Overton Park, which is over there, and over by Rhodes College into North Memphis. And for many years, there was a flooding problem over in North Memphis. That 1 million cubic foot retention pond solves a lot of that flooding problem in North Memphis, in addition to obviously putting, 3 stories of parking that's there. So you see all of this wonderful activity that's here, right? We've got the 4 theaters, Playhouse, Circuit, Theater Works, Hattiloo, you've got the ballet, and you've got this wonderful hotel that's coming into place. Our goal here at Playhouse on the Square, and it's certainly the goal of the other arts groups, the ballet, Hattiloo, the restaurants, the bars, is that this location, this part of town will be the new reason that people come to Memphis. We want this to be the travel destination for Memphis. Certainly people will come to go to Graceland, they will come for Beale Street, but they don't go to Graceland for an entire weekend. They don't go to Beale Street for an entire weekend. There are certainly exceptions to that, right? Tribute week or, games, things like that. But this hotel gives us the opportunity for folks regionally, from Jonesboro, Oxford, Jackson, Birmingham, Little Rock, all of these different areas to come into Memphis, park their car on a Thursday or a Friday at that hotel, see 4 or 5 shows, the ballet, hit these wonderful restaurants, these wonderful bars. They could still go to Graceland during the day. They could still hit Beale Street, at 11 o'clock at night. They can do all of those wonderful things. And the other thing that we have going on, with our facility is that we partner with so many other nonprofit organizations. So other groups like Ballet Memphis, they perform in our space. Opera Memphis performs in our space. New Ballet Ensemble, Collage, Literacy Mid-South, Indie Memphis Film Festival. We have 3 different churches that utilize our space for different things. So it really brings, this community together as it relates to community development. We love what we do as a theater, putting on our art. And one of the things I didn't mention is we've got these 13 education and outreach programs, right? So we have 13 education and outreach programs that reach a radius of about 2.5 hours around Memphis, so in the tri-state area. We want to be, a community driver. We want to make sure that what's happening around us makes sense. We certainly want people to come into our building. We want to create great art. We want to have wonderful educational opportunities and outreach opportunities. We want to make sure nobody's ever turned away from coming into our theater if there's a financial issue or a physical or emotional or intellectual issue. We want to make sure that we have everything in place to do that. And that obviously makes Memphis a better place. It certainly makes Overton Square a better place. And, in the larger scope of things, all of these areas tie together. You'll hear certainly about the development in Overton Square, but it ties in directly to what's happening on Broad Avenue. It ties directly into what's happening on South Main. It ties into what's happening in Highland Row. This kind of activity now is, branching out towards Whitehaven, towards Graceland, those underserved areas, Orange Mound. We want to help drive that. So that's what we're doing. So I think I've talked for like 5 hours straight, right? But I want to take any questions that you might have. I'm going to get out of the sun because my bald head will just burn up here in a second. Any other questions you have, Andrew or Meredith? Anybody?
Yeah, Michael, when you open again, will you have to reduce the audience size?
Yeah, so great question. We've been, I'm actually just going to stand on the rooftop and stay in the shade. Yeah, we have a number of different scenarios in place. So the only people that are at our theater are Whitney Joe, the managing director, and myself, keeping those essential activities going, right? We've got, 5-story building in this huge theater. We got to have payroll, all these different things that are in place. We need to make sure that our employees continue to get paid. How do we do that? Well, certainly we have wonderful funders, unearned income grants, gifts, things like that. But the bulk of our income is tickets, what we call BIS, butts in seats. And those are folks that come into the theater, certainly, but it's also our students that come in for classes. It's the rentals that we have of our various spaces. And that's the big thing that's being hit right now, right? That earned income. So we've done different scenarios. We said, well, we've been doing it now for over a month, but what happens if we can open April 1st? What happens if we can open May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, August 1st? We have all these different scenarios. Our programming is pretty robust, right? So, we do all these shows, we have all these education programs. So it really is a question of when can we open, and we start that programming at that point. But there are considerations, and I'm getting to your how do you, seat people. There are considerations into putting on a play. We can't open one day and put the play on the next day. We need a runway. We need ramp up time, right? So we have to get our staff in. They have to rehearse that show for a month before we can put it on a stage and get our audience in there. Same thing with our education programming. If we can start our education programming on a given date, we've got to back everything up for their training. They're going to go through child advocacy centers, stewards of children education. We've got to make sure all of our ducks in a row are there, background checks, all that kind of good stuff. So once that gets into place, then we get to the point of now our audience comes into that space, right? The audience seeing the show, the students in our classroom. We don't know what those exact parameters are going to be yet. There's a lot of things that are out there, keeping 6 feet apart. Will it be 50% of your capacity? Will it be a strict number like 50 people, 75 people? All of those we have to take into account. If we have to maintain 6 feet of distance, social distancing, while folks are in our auditorium, we're not sure we're going to be able to open that show, because remember, we have to pay for all that. We're a professional resident theater company, so we pay our actors, we pay our designers, directors, all of our staff. There's a financial consideration there. If I can only get 15% of my audience in to see a show, we may have to make some tough decisions until we can get 75% of capacity. So that's where we are. There's no hard and fast answer. When are we going to open? Right now, our plan is to have our staff come back on May 5th. That's when the mayor said, or May 6th, when the mayor said we can do that. But that may change. We've had 3 plans already that have been changed based on the feedback we're getting from Mayor Strickland and from local health folks. And to answer that question right out of the gate, those are the people we're paying attention to. We're going to make sure that certainly our audiences are safe, but certainly that our staff and our teachers, our talent, all of those folks are safe. So we're going to go with the science, and more science, and then we'll pay attention to the rest of it. But we're waiting for some guidelines too.
I have one more COVID-related question, and then I'll move it over to a few questions that Meredith had. Can the dates of current shows that have been delayed due to the virus moved ahead or shown later in the year or next year? And then piggybacking off of that, how can the community help Playhouse on the Square and your resident artists during this time?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, so I'll start with the second half first. When we realized that we had to close down our activities, Whitney, Joe, and I got together right away to say, okay, what are our plans? And the first thing we said was, we are going to make sure that we do not lay off anybody. We want to make sure that we keep our talent employed. In a not-for-profit, theater, that talent, because we're, a lot of what we do is based on the number of people we get through the door. We wanted to make sure that there was some security for our staff, involved. And so even when we closed those shows halfway through their runs, we made sure that we finished paying those folks for their contracts. We're keeping all of our staff on salary, even, with their staying at home. We certainly have meetings on Zoom, and, so we're certainly keeping in touch with them. Our hourly folks, we are paying them an average of what they would normally get when they're working in the box office, or, maintenance staff, things like that. But that's a hardship, certainly when you have no income coming in. How can folks help us? Well, certainly if you are in a position to help us financially, we would absolutely appreciate that. But I will always say this: we are not the heroes in all of this, right? The heroes are the folks that are, manning, bedsides at the hospitals and nursing homes and fire departments and, police officers and, all of those folks on the front lines. Those are, and then we have, folks who are on the streets who have, just an issue getting fed. And we know that those are the real heroes, the real folks that need help. But the flip side of that is the arts provide that healing. And I mentioned this, at the beginning of our tour. The arts provide the healing aspect of that. We have an innate desire to express ourselves and to enjoy the expression of others. And so we're going to do that. We want to be a part of that healing. So yeah, certainly if people can financially support us, great. Contact me about that. We'll let you help us out that way. As it pertains to moving shows around, we've done both. We've moved shows, we've postponed shows, and we've outright canceled shows. We had a great show that I saw a couple of years ago called Days of Rage that I was really looking forward to. We had to cancel it because there was no place to put it in our upcoming season, because we already had planned our 1920-21 season. We realized that we had one show in the 21 season that we could probably replace. So when we knew we were going to be postponing things, we moved Little Shop of Horrors into the Something Rotten slot, and we moved Something Rotten into April, May of 2021. The other shows get a little bit hard because, again, with so many productions, we have to schedule things, right? And we can't just move things around willy-nilly, because also mixed in with that, we've got the, Opera Memphis, Midtown Opera Festival, right? We've got various dance groups that are coming and utilizing our spaces. We've got Indie Memphis utilizing our spaces. So we can't, just willy-nilly move people around. It really becomes a team effort. So the big long answer to that is sometimes we can postpone them, sometimes we have to outright cancel them. And hopefully get them in a future season.
Michael, how does Playhouse on the Square decide which shows are performed every year?
Yeah, it's a team effort. The buck stops with me. So, if you end up hating a show, you get to come to me and say, Mike, I hate that show. But then you also have to tell me when you love it too. But it's not just me picking the shows. I certainly traveled quite a bit. I travel 2 or 3 times to New York every year. I try to get to another location. A couple of years I went to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival out in Oregon, obviously. I went to Chicago last year. My plan this year was to get up to the Humana Festival up in Louisville. That got canceled, unfortunately. So I see a lot of shows. But I also have a wonderful board of directors. I also have a wonderful staff, and they all have great ideas, as to shows they would like, they think are awesome, something we might want to bring back. In fact, when I went up to Chicago last year, I saw a production of Six, which was at the Chicago Shakespeare. And the reason I went to go see it was because one of my costume designers said, you have to do this show. And she gave me the CD of it. And I went, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I'll get up there. And, it's a wonderful show. It's about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, if they were to all get together and form a girls' rock band. And it's an all-female show. The band is all women. The directors, designers, choreographers, everybody was a female on that production. And I went up to Chicago and I fell in love with it. Contacted them right away. I said, I want to do your show in Memphis because I can cast it about 3 times down here. We have such great talent. They said, no, we're going to Broadway. And sure enough, they had just opened when the COVID-19 crisis came down. So how do we pick these shows? We get we look at about 80 to 90 different scripts and shows. I look at all of them, certainly. I show them to my staff. We read the scripts. I get input from our board of directors, from our community, and we whittle it down to the 20 shows that we do. And, unfortunately, sometimes it's a barren desert with good shows, and other times, you know, you have more shows than you could possibly do. And it's a balancing act. And we also know when we have to have musicals. You know, we like to do the big popular shows when it's subscription season because more people come and we can sell more subscriptions, things like that. But, you know, we want to make sure we have a diversity of shows, right? I always say, you know, my staff kids me about it, but I always say we are the black, white, gay, straight, male, female, young, old, blue, red, gender-friendly theater in the city. Our city is our surrounding area is so diverse. We are a theater company that wants to reflect that diversity. So the shows that we pick, we never shy away from language. We don't shy away from nudity. We don't shy away from subject matter. We're not gratuitous about it, but if it's an important message, we're going to produce that show. What else?
Well, Michael, we're running out of time, and I know we could spend, you know, hours on hours talking with you, so we might have to do a Playhouse on the Square tour in person, round 2.
Sure.
But where can people go to learn more if they, you know, have further questions or want to see what other shows are available? Tell us where they can go.
Yeah, love for you to go to our website, which is playhouseonthesquare.org. I'm going to take us down in the elevators up top. Playhouseonthesquare.org, and a lot of information on there about our education programs. We will certainly keep folks up to date as it you know, pertains to the shows that we're doing, if we're postponing or canceling, doing any of those sorts of things. The education programming, all of that's on there. Certainly ways to help. There's a donate button on there. But a lot of information about our staff and our board of directors. The other, you are welcome to contact us directly. We certainly don't live, you know, in our gilded penthouse, you know, with all the doors locked. You're free to email me. All of our emails at Playhouse are easy. They're long. I don't know why I'm showing you the door. I guess I can show you me now. Hi. Yeah, it's our first name plus at playhouseonthesquare.org. So if you want to get in touch with me, it's Michael at playhouseonthesquare.org. If you would like us to be involved with your organization somehow, I'd love for you to go to our Director of Community Relations, and that's Marcus Cox. His email is Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S, at playhouseonthesquare.org. And let us see how we can help you. Certainly we would love for you to help us, but let's see what we can do for you. Let's make this a wonderful, relationship. And we want to expand that as much as we can. How can you help us and how can we help you?
I love it. I love the collaboration. Well, you guys heard it here first, folks. Michael Detroit, thank you so much. And if there's anybody that you think would, enjoy watching this tour, we'll be sharing it on social media this afternoon. So be on the lookout for that, as well as a thank you for attending email. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Happy Friday, everyone.
Thank you.